We talk about migrating waterfowl and winter birds of northeast Ohio. Once the pretty summer songbirds have departed for point south, what do birders do? They put on another layer of clothes and go looking for waterfowl. Ducks, geese, swans, loons, grebes, and gulls. This presentation showcases these hardy visitors along with hawks, owls, and smaller birds like snow buntings and kinglets. If you don't like cold weather, ask about car birding, a favorite alternative to those walking when the wind chills plummet. Matt has been interested in birds and other wildlife most of his life, but did not start photographing them until 2006. And I can tell you, you're going to see some wonderful photographs. He retired in 2015, and shortly thereafter met some members of the Audubon Society of Greater Cleveland at an event. He felt an immediate bond with them and their mission of education and land stewardship. His catalog of bird pictures soon became the content of several presentations about the birds of northeast Ohio and their habitats. Please welcome Matt.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much. And by the way, if you're not doing anything this Saturday, we're having a buckthorn blast at the Novak Sanctuary in Aurora, where you can bend over and cut buckthorn and treat the cut stumps for 3 hours. So if you've done anything bad and you're looking for penance, that might be the reason to come there. I'm in charge of the invasive species stuff that we do at our Audubon chapter. We have four properties that total almost 600 acres, and no one is immune to non-native invasives. So we fight them all the time. But anyway, so I was happy to fill in this. This is the first of the season that I'm giving this talk. I usually wind up giving it 4 or 5 times between, usually it starts in November though, and the last one is like February, March, because that's when we've got 2 big migrations of the waterfowl and a lot of winter birding to do. So how many of you are members of Black River Audubon? Holy shamoles. If we could get this kind of participation, we would stop doing these things. That's awesome. We have, I told Rob, we have a building and in one of our sanctuaries we call the Ed Center, but we're out in the middle of nowhere, and it's so hard to fill it up. So they started a speakers bureau before I joined 10 years ago, and we take our education on the road. So it's a pretty busy thing. But why do we care about birds? That's one of the first things I like to ask people. Is this going on here? There we go. And I think the biggest reason is they bring beauty, wonder, and awe into our lives. And Lord knows we need some of that, okay, with all the stuff going on in the world. And the second thing is that they're good indicators of what's going on. We all know the story of the bald eagle and DDT, and that was our alert button to something's rotten in Denmark. So that's why we should care about birds in the very least. You don't have to chase them like I do pretty much every day of the year, but care about them. Since it's a talk about migration, I thought I'd throw a little something in why the birds migrate. Well, we know that the ones that do, they go north and south for a reason. So in the springtime, they're following an internal urge to reproduce. And those hormones kick in wherever they happen to be spending the winter, whether it be the northern part of South America, Central America, or southern United States. And they start moving their way north to habitats that have both the food and the nesting habitat that they need, and the space, because they're kind of all together when they're down in their wintering grounds, and everybody tolerates everybody, but when those hormones kick in, they don't like to have their own kind too close together here. And the other thing is they're looking for suitable habitat. Remember, when it's winter here, it's summer down south. So things are switching up there. And in the fall, it's mostly about ice. It's really about food. So the birds that are up in Canada all the way up to the Arctic Circle, and you're going to meet some of those this evening, they're trying to get out of there. They could tolerate it if the water just wouldn't freeze. You're going to see that they eat a lot of stuff, but most of it is related to the water. So once it freezes up, they've got to get out of there. So who are these migratory waterfowl? They're birds that meet their energy needs on or near the water. And they're the ducks and the geese and the swans and the grebes and some loons. Okay, we're only going to talk about one loon. You do get that oddball one, but that's not common enough here. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about gulls, right? Anybody ever see any gulls up here in Lorain County? Yeah. So murmurations of gulls. That's what you have here, murmurations. So where do they live from April to November? Well, they, where's my clicker there? How did I go back on that? That was not cool. Let's pick that up and see if it picks up where I left off. It's not going to do that. Keep my fingers where they belong. So they're going to the prairie pothole country. That's what they refer to that as. It looks kind of like this in that north central part of the United States and up in some of those provinces of Canada. That's where some of them are going. And others are going further up into the boreal forest. And if you take a picture of that from an airplane, it looks kind of like that. It gets a little darker green because you have a lot more conifers up there. And then the red area you see is the top of the world, okay? And this is what that looks like. There are some relief on the planet up there, but pretty much it's flat and a lot of water. And the reason they're up there is because they eat a lot of stuff related to water. And this is the many, many different things. You've all heard about we're down 3 billion birds from what we were 30, 40 years ago, whatever that study was a few years ago. But the waterfowl are exempt. Waterfowl are actually increasing in numbers. And so are the raptors, surprisingly. And for the waterfowl, at least, it's because they go to places that people don't want to develop. And they can't farm easily and all this sort of a thing. So we're still okay. And they even winter in areas where there's a lot of water, and people aren't getting rid of the big bodies of water. They're draining the local wetlands to put in another big box store, but not that. So all of this food, if something's not available, they can move to something else, and most of them do. I try to remember all the things that they ate for each one of the birds and all that, but suffice it to say that maybe they eat mostly invertebrates. Those are like dragonfly larvae and stuff, or mollusks like zebra mussels, thank goodness. That's why we get so many birds on Lake Erie is because of the gizzard shad, I think, more than zebra mussels. But some of them go down for the zebra mussels, and if one's not there, they go to the other. Okay, so that's really good for them. And it kind of looks like this. You can see a dragonfly larva in the top left, a hellgrammite. Any fishermen in here? Hellgrammites are, gosh, awful good bait for catching fish. Those are some acorns floating on the surface. A lot of ducks and geese will eat acorns. The shad, if you will, little fish, duckweed. A lot of them are pretty much herbivores, and they'll slurp some. They slurp. You're going to hear that term again, too. They slurp off the surface things like duckweed and other plants. Fish eggs, crayfish, which are crustaceans, good old slugs. They like slugs, too. They'll eat those. And that bottom right-hand picture, so if you're a duck and you're flying south and you stop in Minnesota, what are you eating in the lakes? Loud, real loud. Come on, somebody said. Wild rice. Thank you. Yeah, so that's wild rice. You get a lot of ducks up there. So we're going to break them up into the dabblers and the divers, and we all know, because you're birders, that what the dabblers and the divers do. So that's what a dabbler does, right? You see a lot of tush, and that's what a dabbler, and that's what a diver does. So just this morning, I keep asking myself questions. I massage my talks almost every time I do them. I go over them always out loud for the whole length of them. My wife says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm not going to fall on my nose." Okay, so here we go. So I put this together this morning because to try to remember all the exact sizes, but just run down them. They're in size, increasing size. Our dabblers, there's only 7 or 8? 8 of those, and there's 15 of the diving ducks. And it gives you an idea of relative size. And if you see the letter C after it, that's a cavity nesting duck. And if you thought only the wood duck, which is not in this presentation because it's really not one of the big migrants, they're here, they migrate out, a lot of them. But there's cavity nesting ducks, and that just knocked me over, especially that last one. Can you see a common merganser trying to squeeze into a pileated woodpecker hole? I would like to see that. That would be kind of cool. So, and the other thing is here, where do they go? Because that's what I tried to put in here, and I thought, I'm just going to summarize it. So you see who goes where. To the prairie potholes, the boreal forest, the Arctic region. But then there's that half a dozen birds that just go all over. And even in front of your house on the mailbox, if you have a little plant down there, my son lives in Illinois, and the mallards make a nest under his mailbox. It's probably about 100 or 150 yards through houses to get to the stormwater basins that are around there. That's why the mallards are there. But so they go anywhere. And speaking of mallards, let's... Heard any spring peepers lately? That's what gets us out in the spring, doesn't it? When you've been, stuck in the house all winter long, or just been looking for another northern harrier or something like that. And you start hearing those guys come out there and see the ducks moving about. So our mallard is probably the most recognizable duck that we have. And they say it's the duck from which all of the domestic ducks have been bred over the many years. The obvious benchmark here for identifying it is that purple speculum. Those are secondary feathers. The primaries are those 9 feathers out at the tip of the wing. And then there's a bunch of ones after that called secondaries. And there's a purple speculum there bordered by white. That's critical. So even if you start getting one that's kind of funky, you're not sure, if it spreads its wing, that's what we got here. Or hybrid, too. They have lots of babies, because babies, sadly, are at the bottom of the food chain, but that's nature's way. So if there's a lot of small ones floating on the water, you get avian predators, aquatic predators, all kinds of things in there. And you can see the distribution map. The pinkish color is breeding territory, but the purple just below it is year-round. So they're here, and they're here in our area, too. As long as you got some open water, the mallards are around. And a group, for the pretty little ducklings. So they get all saturated until they start getting a little older. They hybridize easily. And if you've got any community lakes, this is always fun to say, how many different hybrid mallards do we have? And so there you go. You got a handful of them. I think the top left has a little bit of black duck in it. I have no idea what that green head and brown chested one is. But this is, again, at a stormwater retention pond in Middlefield, Ohio, in Geauga County. And anything goes. And there's white ducks that come in there. There's all kinds of migratory ducks that periodically stop in there and stuff. So it moves naturally then to the black duck, and both of these are about the same size. And sometimes they're hard. If you're looking at ducks out in the open water, sometimes they get out there, if they're just lazing around, they're not eating, they'll go out into deeper water and be in big rafts, mixed rafts of ducks. But you can see the mallard there in the lower left. She's nice and brown. And then put it up against that really rich chocolate brown of a black duck. And look at the speculum on the black duck. So you can see the purple there. There's no white. So that's another thing. The males and the females look decidedly similar except for bill color. The male is that greenish yellow bill, and the female is more of a dark olive color. And they're primarily the eastern part of the continent where they hang out throughout the year. I always like watching these guys. So here's our word schlurp again. So that big bill allows them to schlurp. This is Arizona. These birds know how to winter, okay? This is outside of Phoenix at can't remember the name of the, Gilbert Water Ranch. In Arizona, because water is so dear, they take their processed sewage water, their refuse water, and when it's all cleaned up, they put it out over these very shallow areas that are depressions, and it goes back into the aquifer. And it just attracts so many birds. You go there, if you spend 2 or 3 hours and you're a birder who knows a lot of birds, you easily accumulate a list in the winter of 60 species of birds. And around you will be people walking dogs, there's people exercising, there's wheelchairs going around. It's just the most incredible place. And all kinds of ducks. So they get in there, and all this wetland stuff has got all kinds of food for them. Those big honking bills is what really makes them kind of cool looking, I think. And this is an internet picture, the top left, because I really wish I could snap one of these. Do you see all those laminations in the bill? That allows them to schlurp off the surface, which is what they're doing in the bottom picture. They're walking in really shallow water, stirring stuff up, taking stuff into their bill, closing the bill, the water scoots out, and whatever's good inside stays, and they swallow it. So my wife hollers at me for slurping my milkshake and stuff like that. I'm just pretending I'm a northern shoveler. I think the gadwall is a handsome little bird, sort of quiet elegance, except that it's got its notoriety is that it's a pirate. It likes to steal fish from diving ducks as soon as they get to the top. It'll swim over and snatch the fish if it can get it. So I thought that was a cool fact. If it's not true, blame allaboutbirds.org. I have that website at the end here. You got to have all this kind of stuff because just looking at bird pictures, you got to have something cute to say once in a while. The hunters really know the birds, and they've got to know them on the wings. So look at the interesting colorations. And there's secondary feathers. These are primary feathers out here. These are secondaries. And the coloration. I am absolutely enamored with how nature can reproduce feathers the same coloration. Some of them multicolored. The individual feather has 2 or 3 colors on it, and individual after individual within a species. That just blows me away. Ain't life cool? So anyway, that's the gadwall there, and they're all over the South. They're easy to bird find in the wintertime, so you don't have a problem. You go to inland lakes and all that. There's plenty of them around. The northern pintail, another elegant one. This one doesn't show the pintail much, but that's an easy one for me at least to profile at a distance. That's long sloping bill that's like patent leather on there. And here's one on the ice in the wintertime with that nice pointy tail there. Excuse me, I think the feather patterns are just amazing when you get close-ups. I sent my friends a picture once of the back of a yellow-bellied sapsucker. And if you don't know what that looks like, get a picture of a yellow-bellied sapsucker and take a look at the intricate detail on the back. And I said, what bird is this? And I was messing with them, and then they messed with me, and they embarrassed me too. So, but that's fun. So there we are. They're all over the place. They tend to leave. They leave early from up north because you see where they're going to spend the winter is way down south in Mexico and even into South America. So they're one of the early ones to leave. And we don't see as many of them as I would like to, but when we do, they seem to be in nice tight groups. So that's our northern pintail. American widgeon, another cool bird. This was my old camera. See that thing in there? That's my justification for buying a new camera. I couldn't get rid of that. So, and you know if you take your camera to get it fixed, you're going to give the camera repair shop enough money, you may as well just put that into a new camera body. That's what I told my wife. I think the female's a little easier. All these female ducks, I don't know if you've noticed, they're all brown. That's nature's way because many female birds just sit on a nest, and if they were brightly colored, they'd be an easy target for predators. But she's got some orange in her, and that light-colored head and all that, and then the bill sort of separates. The bill is the same on both of the birds, even though the rest of the plumage is a little bit different. Again, unique feather patterns when they're in flight. One of the things that causes the ducks to also be more abundant in the last 25 years than they were is the hunters. And the hunters and Ducks Unlimited, they don't take that many ducks, okay? But they love being out there in that. And the monies that have been put into conservation of wetlands is just incredible. If you're a birder and you wonder, what can I do? Buy a conservation stamp every year. What are they, $25 or something? That's your way of putting back. If we visit all these places that the state or the federal people are maintaining, that's like your duck stamp. So they have to buy a hunting license, and then they have to buy a federal duck stamp, and all that money goes back into conservation and management of the areas. We had a bird emergency yesterday. That's what I tell my wife when I'm not going to make it home for supper. A bird emergency because some guy said he saw 2 cinnamon teal in Geauga County in eclipse plumage, and the pictures he showed were classic Bigfoot. Okay, just classic Bigfoot. And you know, how do you call somebody, well, challenged? I don't know. I looked at him, and I couldn't even tell what kind of a duck it was. And yet they were with 40 green-winged teal. So the teal have started moving already into our area, but it turned out that nobody else could find them but him. So you got to have a better picture than Bigfoot if you're going to do that. Kind of like a marsh sandpiper, right? You got to have a good picture to know what you're looking at. So this female, again, is going to be kind of fun to identify because she's got a white streak at the base of her tail here. And those, they say, are upper tail coverts. So when you're going to see all these females on a slide here shortly and see how you start looking at them and get to identify them. And it's really an off-take of this on the male, okay, but not quite as dramatic here. Anyway, this is what they do, same kind of a thing. And there's Mama. This is from Cornell's site. I don't always have good pictures, so if I need something for demonstration, I grab it off of All About Birds or the internet in general. I got a really cool one from the internet you'll see later about a grebe. But anyway, so that's a pretty shot for whoever it was that took that. The blue-winged teal, another one that kind of leaves a little bit early. They're gorgeous birds, males especially. There's the female, and what we're looking for on her is this white on her face that pretty much, see how much white he's got here, this crescent? So that's mirroring some of that. Going back too far over here, but that's her. When you put her together with the green-winged teal, do you see the differences where the whites, we're going off the screen there. You don't see all that. Let me see if that moves over a little bit. Boy, that light's bright when it hits you in the face. That a little better? Okay. So you see the white stripe right back in here that we're looking for. And she's more uniformly colored on her head and a little bit darker overall, where the blue-winged teal has a lighter head with all that white on the face and all that sort of thing. So I know that some of you maybe don't care about identifying, but if you just find me a good male, just like with the warblers, right? Show me the Blackburnian male. I don't care about the female. A lot of these dabblers are called puddle ducks. That is another thing, because they can explode from the water. Where if you've ever watched divers take off, they've got to run across the water and they're splashing and all this, and the geese and the swans do the same kind of a thing. But look how far south these teal go as well. So they're like the pintails, they're early departers. And then they start out earlier in the spring as well, heading back up north, because they got a long way to fly. And this was a Florida shot I got a few years ago of blue-winged teal. Did everybody see the blue wings? Isn't that a cool blue-winged teal here? That's a pintail. That's right. That's a pintail. So, yeah, this is a different crowd. I usually have a bunch of average people. The strongest bird they see is a pileated woodpecker at their feeders. Okay, so you guys are a different crowd. So you'll probably appreciate this one. So there you go. And somebody also told me to label my pictures, almost all of them. So that's why I inserted the names there. So I won't go into all the detail, but if you study them a little bit, if you put that together, you can get an idea of what the females look like. Because we see a lot of them out there during migration. And a lot of male birds are looking like females during the first 6 months of their life. So they're not going to transition until springtime. So ruddy ducks, for example, are one of those. Now, I know this is not a duck, but don't we see these guys when we're out there at the migration and all that stuff? And they're primarily vegetarians. So you got a little bit of stuff in his mouth there. And they're all over the place. And when you get them, how do you identify them? Look for the cluster of tadpoles. Anybody ever come on a puddle in the ground and see how the tadpoles all cluster together? That's what coots do during migration. They'll be out there in the big lake, and you see all these ducks stretched out, a little space between them, or they're in a long line. If you look for a tadpole cluster, that's probably coots. And then good luck counting them. So, but they're a lot of fun. They've got those crazy feet that are lobed toes. They're not webs. And they allow them to walk around in the marshes and stuff. But you can see how they blend in there, even with the ice and all that. They're around all winter long. And this is a sequence. I don't do a lot of video stuff because you have to sit and do nothing waiting for things to happen. And I don't do sitting doing nothing very well. So these are just a couple quick ones. This was ice that had a little warm day and the surface melted. So there's a little bit of water on it. And I was approaching them and they wanted to get away. So this is kind of what they were doing. They were just flip-flopping around until they could get out of the way. Where am I going here? Go backwards, Matt. There we go. And so that's an artistic picture. That's what you say for a blurry picture. It's like bird in flat. I don't know. This is one of those things they put in Reader's Digest and say, fill in the caption and we'll put it in next month and see who gets a free subscription to a $10 magazine. So, okay, so that's it for our dabblers, 8 of them. And now the divers, they're eating the same kind of foods, they're just going deeper for it. And we're going to see them in the winter in big mixed flocks, and you're going to see some of that here. I like the bufflehead because it's just a cute little duck. It's the smallest one of the group at about 14 inches, which is like a green-winged teal, but they're so easy to identify. This was just a cool shot to see its feet. How nice contrast there. there's a lot of photography that requires skill, and a lot of photography requires luck. And that kind of shot requires just serendipity. You know, you keep taking pictures and then you look at them when you get home. But the female's so easy to tell at a distance. She really is. And there's a lot of them. They're going to be on the smallest little marshes on a corner pond type of thing, or they'll be out there out in the middle of the reservoir somewhere. I don't know much about Lake Erie. I don't do a lot of winter birding on Lake Erie, but you got mostly red-breasted mergansers on Lake Erie. So, but we'll see those too. And this was a quick sequence. These two were following each other. This was in March on a small community lake, and they were just flipping. And I mean, this is hormones. And because they're diving ducks, boom, they go and they're gone. I don't know where they went. I didn't follow them after that, but it was a quick sequence. The ski slope duck, right? That's a ski slope that we're looking at there. That's how you're going to tell this from what duck that we always get it confused with? Yeah, redhead, right. Until you finally realize that all that white is, there's nothing, you know, nothing red and white is what's going to give that away. And then the ski slope. Female is drab, but she has absolutely the same profile out at a distance there. Why is this duck doing this? Any sarcastic answers? Yoga. My sarcastic answer is, my answer is because it can. And it can because the birds have more vertebrae in their neck. Why do they have more vertebrae in their neck? Because they have a uropygial gland at the base of their tail, which is an oil gland that they use. This is a black-crowned night heron, the only picture I had of one really getting to that gland, grabbing some of that oil, and they preen it through their feathers. So they can do this because they've got this incredible flexibility of their neck to be able to get back there. So anyway, that's a reason why. I miss coal-fired coal plants, power plants. East 55th Street. You're going to see some pictures here from the old days of East 55th when they used to put that warm water out into the lake, and the shad came by the bazillions, and all the ducks and the gulls and everybody were there, and you didn't have to kill yourself going out on the break wall that's full of ice to try to see the ducks. Actually, we're better off for that. But anyway, can you find the canvasbacks in there? Sure you can. They're easy amongst the different scaup. And we're going to talk about scaup. Okay, gull people, what gull do we have here? Yeah, we got ages and stages of great black-backed gulls. And they'll drive you nuts too. So just worry about the adults in the beginning. You'll pick up the other stuff later. And if you spend $40 on a book like I did, you realize they don't know what the heck they're talking about. There's no way. You look at them and they go, I'm sorry, I just don't see that. But what do I know? The ruddy ducks, redheads rather, these remind me of rugby players, okay? They're tough little guys, okay, just like, they're sweethearts, but they're really rough when they get out there and they play hard and all that. But yeah, they've got that red head, but they certainly have a different bill. They certainly have a different profile. And the mantle, which is their wings and their back feathers, is gray. It's not white. So those are your quick indicators there. And they'll be generally in pretty good numbers when you do see them. Although I was at Avon Lake several years ago when I counted 700 canvasbacks out on the lake one time. They're amazing when you find concentrations. Back to 55th Street again. So now we have a lot of redheads. But so here's the canvasbacks here. Look at the white mantles over here. And there's another one here. You see the ski slope bill. There's a female over here. So you start getting used to seeing that amongst them. I'll leave it up for just. Pardon me?
Which one has the ski slope bill?
That's the canvasback. So there's a canvasback there. Red head, black chest, and white mantle. And there's another one here. This is the female right there. And you guys have a better view of it than I do from this crazy angle. But most of them are redheads, and then they're mixed in with scaup over here. And those will drive you nuts too, won't they? Are you sure you saw a greater scaup? We rarely see greater scaup over here. Okay. So there's my rugby players again with the big jowls. They coming at you. They're just good Scottish boys, you know. They just came and they're going to go get a pint after the game or something. Ringneck ducks. I embarrassed myself and I said, boy, I think they should have named this duck something else. Where the hell is the ringneck? And then I put this picture up. And the man in the back of the audience pointed out, there's your red ring. That's the ring neck. And I said, how in the world did they do that? He said, when they named this duck, probably in the 17 or 1800s, how were they identifying birds? They were harvesting them. And then they had the bird in hand. So, that's how they did that. And so they, just like the red-bellied woodpeckers, right? When you finally realize that they do have a lovely red blush between the legs, it's a really cool feature when they're at your feeder. But they would be called something different today if they were identified this week. Something would have to do with that red cap. It wouldn't be the red belly. So, but anyway, they're all over the place there. This is a picture my son, Mike, said. He's the one who got me into the bad habit of taking pictures. I started buying his old equipment. Don't buy your kids old equipment, because they're making money and you are retarding yourself, your advancement for getting to become a better photographer. But Mike always took good pictures, and I said, wow, did you turn that into black and white in Lightroom? He goes, no, it was a dreary day, and these are black and white birds, and that's how it turned out. So that's kind of just a cool picture I threw in. Golden eyes, the common, I wish we had barrows around here. That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? You have to go a little further north and west for that. But female, again, is just a real easy bird to get to identify. Here she is with what kind of a merganser in the background? Red-breasted. And what is lacking that makes it a red-breasted rather than a common? White chin patch. The common, you're going to see that a little bit. The common has a white chin patch, and if you see that, that's the identifier for the female merganser. Obviously, the bill tells you it's a merganser right away, but let's spend time on the golden eye. She's really got that cool look, almost startled, doesn't it? Got almost a startled look. And it's a compact little duck, too. So they widely ranged over the winter time. You find them all over the place in lakes. And they're diving down. And you can see this is a characteristic tail of a lot of the diving ducks. They're really kind of spiky. And you'll see that again on the ruddy ducks. You get many long-tailed ducks off of the harbor over here in the winter? A few? Yeah. The reason we don't see enough of them is they're an Arctic breeder. So they're eating shellfish and stuff down to as much as 200 feet down. They'll travel to get down to. They got those fantastic tail feathers in breeding plumage. This is actually its winter plumage. I'll show you another one where its breeding plumage is. But when they go to winter, they're wintering on the coastlines. And they will, you see, blue is surrounding all the Great Lakes and all that, but we just don't have as many, I think, as the sea coasts on both east and west coast of the United States. So when we get them inland, they're very special, and I have very few good pictures of them. This may be an internet picture here because I don't think I've ever been that close. So the males, or the females, and the young of the year have all kinds of different colorations because this bird molts 3 times in a year. So that's kind of crazy itself. There's a mix. This bird in the lower right here, this is similar to what its breeding plumage looks like. But you're going to have to go way north to see that if you want to get up there. But they're just kind of cool to look. And they're, again, you see them in mixed flocks with all sorts of other things. But they're aggressive divers. And whenever you go out there, I'm a shameless lister. Okay, shameless because I believe in eBird and the fact that all of us contributing our numbers contributes to citizen science. And so we want to get them on our list every year, and we'll travel crazy distances sometimes just to see them, but they're way the heck out in the distance. Here's a breeding plumage one. This is an internet picture. Wish I had taken that picture. I'd be real proud of myself. So, and some more guys here. So now we're into the mergansers. The hoodie. It's a cavity nester. It has nested in Geauga County in a wood duck box. And that's exactly in their general territory. Wood duck boxes is what they will use. And I think I've got some audio on this one here. And she finds that very attractive. So I have heard this. If you get to a lake and you're getting into the spring migration side of this thing, we're in the fall migration now, but in the spring, slightly larger nail, that's the black tip on it, and rounded head. And the lesser, and if you see a profile looking straight on them, the lesser is more of a tall, narrow head too. But it's got a tuft of feathers that generally stick out somewhere up here. It is not a structure of the skull, it is just feather tufts. So, but anyway, that's how you tell the difference of them there. The graders tend a little more towards saltwater than the lessers, and we definitely in our area see a lot more lesser spot. But here's a different angle of those same two birds. You see how much more rounded this one is? And there's a little tuft up there. And now in a group, click there, and now you can pick out the graders, look for the rounded heads, okay, even on the females and all, which is greater and which is lesser. So I'm not going to hold you to it, okay? That's why so many people report these ducks without pictures. They don't want to be told. So that's what that, yeah, those send in teal. Anyway, if you send in pictures, send Bigfoot and say, well, the scope view is a lot better. Of course, it was a lot better. My camera needs updating. The reddies are cool. That blue bill gets more blue as we get closer to mating time. And they're really cool, compact little duck. They've always got that little tail up in the air. And whenever you're trying to identify them, they got their head tucked in and they're floating, right? They're big rat. They're hard to find. Females and young of the year look very similar to each other there. And here we are again with some different ones here. The bills changing color just a little bit. The males are really pretty easy to identify at a distance, okay? And then this duck, well, that's not a duck. What is that? Peregrine. Yeah, so this is the only sequence of peregrines that I have that are good. And I have most of the pictures in my raptor talk, not in this talk. But this was at my favorite birding spot in Geauga County, Ladue Reservoir, which is my substitute for your Lake Erie. Okay, and they will take all kinds of birds, and they can take something like a small duck, 14-inch duck. So this guy went out over the lake. These are terrible quality pictures because this is a half a mile away and this is a cropped picture. But I think the content should get me some kind of a prize. I'm working on humility too. My wife's working on that with me. So anyway, it flew over, and what it was hoping for is that one of these little boogers would take flight. And it got closer and closer and closer, and this wasn't their first rodeo. So, isn't that good content? Come on. You got to toot your own horn. I was in sales all the time. You always got to tell people what you. That's why I do this shameless listing too. It's all about the numbers. Okay? About the numbers. The scoters, we're going to fly through them because you've probably seen more of them. We've only got a couple spots on the east side of Cleveland where we see them routinely. Sims Park, you must have a lot more zebra mussels over there than we have. But they're scattered off throughout there. The black scoter, the females forget it. They're just so damn hard. I'm sorry. But the males got that lovely orange spot. If it's mature, the surf's got that crazy clown-like bill with a big white rectangle on the back of its neck. And then, does it ever show you the white wing patch when you're trying to identify it? Heck no. And you just sit there for 10, 15 minutes with your scope on it, hoping it will stretch its feathers and you can see the white wing. But if you're lucky enough to get a male with that comma, you got a mate in the shape. So those are our ducks. We're going to head now. How am I doing here? Oh, okay, we're moving. The geese, are they big ducks or are ducks small geese? I don't know. They're all in the same big order, Anisteriformes or something like that. I don't do that very well, but I'm going to show you the rare and elusive Canada goose. There are 14 subspecies of this across the continent, and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, along with Pennsylvania, decided to get the Maxima as the bird they were reintroducing all those many years ago, and that's why you have so many lovely geese on your golf courses, those of you who like golf. So they are cute as can be, muskrat nests in here. They make a lot of noise, and they teach their kids to make a lot of noise too. So, and they're always making noise when you don't want them to, right? You're trying to sneak up, and they know when you're still in the woods and you can't even see the water, and they start honking. Cackling geese, very abundant in the middle part of the country. That's why they're so special here, because they do most of their migrating and breeding and everything right up the central part of the continent. And we just don't see them except in the winter. How small are they? That's a gadwall in the foreground. And that's a cackling goose behind him. So yeah, we're talking about 20 inches or so in size. the real ones. I did see a flock of them visiting my brother-in-law and his wife out in Seattle many years ago, and there were a flock of them out there, and they looked like a flock of ducks on all across this lawn. They were just grazing like geese too. They're primarily herbivores, so they're eating grass and other things down there. Here's one mixed in. I think this is a picture from All About Birds, mixed in with a bunch of snow geese. And you know it's snow goose and not a Ross's goose because of its grin patch. Very good, or smile, some people say. You can see the snow goose and Ross's goose distributions, which again is why we don't see a lot of them. But when we do, they're pretty awesome. This was out at Mosquito Creek Reservoir probably more than a dozen years ago. The only time I've seen a flock go that big. But they have a lot of, they manage for waterfowl out there. So there's lots of birds. Not especially, easy on ears or whatever, but so the grid patch is what we're looking for, a longer bill, if you will, a pretty good size goose. They do come in two different colors, the blue goose, if you will, or the dark phase. Same species, just a different color, more kind of like we've got the red and the gray screech owl type of thing. And here's this, I talked to you earlier about how incredible I think nature is with the coloration. Those are the primary wing feathers that I only thought were black until I took this picture at this retention pond, and I realized they're gray at the base of each feather. And only the primaries, all the primaries are here, like 9 feathers, and then the secondaries are all behind me. I just thought it was beautiful. Anyway, I'm gonna you get, birds are the entry-level drug to becoming a nature nerd. Okay, so if you like birds, you're going to eventually like plants. And if you like plants, you're eventually going to like bugs. And if you like bugs and plants, you're going to eventually get into soils. Okay, because all of this, it's all interrelated so tight that it's inextricably tied together, which means you cannot separate it unless you screw something up. So nature is wonderful.
And then you have to hire somebody to carry your books.
Yeah. Oh no, it's another app in your phone. You just got to buy the newest phone so that you have more capacity to carry the junk. So I don't remember where this Ross's was, but there's a mallard in the foreground to give you an idea how small this guy is. These pictures right now, the one I showed you of the wing and these two were all at the same retention pond at the same moment in time a few years ago. So we've got the Ross's goose with this funny colored green at the base, a short bill and all this. And here's a Ross's by a snow over here. And then we have a snow and a hybrid. So this is the Ross's here. This is a hybrid because it's got this little bend in it here and a smaller smile in it. So we have 3 different strange geese all at the same day. Greater white-fronted, a bazillion of them out in the central part of the country. Not so many over here. They're special when they show up. They mix in with the Canadas and the cornfields and all that. So look, when you see just a flock of them, don't say, oh, it's just a bunch of Canadas. You got to look through them and see if there's something else there. The swans, the tundra swans, notice that just their map pathways of migration. So we here in Northeast Ohio, we get them coming south. They're going southeast in November on their way to the Chesapeake Bay, and they're going northwest through our area in March when they're on their way back to the Arctic Circle. Because they're all white and they group nest and everything all the way up there on the Arctic Circle. They're fabulous to watch. I counted them one day in 3 hours at Ladue Reservoir. They started coming through and I counted 1,000 geese in 3 hours. Most of them flying over, but every once in a while they do land, and they don't feed. They just rest. So they're not doing. And they've got a little bit of yellow on the base of the bill, and the bill, when it meets the eye, kind of meets it at a point. So the eye stands out by itself, and you're going to see the difference here in a minute with the trumpeter here. And they do need runway to take off. And they're fantastic to watch as they're flapping their wings and splashing and walking, running along the water as they're taking off here. This is December, one of December years ago at Ladue, that everything froze up by the time December came. And those great big feet are kind of cool to watch, big legs. So then the trumpeters, this was cell phone picture through the spotting scope, but they're dabblers too. They're all vegetarian, pretty much the geese. and they're just dipping down just a long way down. Look at that. They're dabblers. Look at all the dabblers. So there should be dabbler geese. So getting a close-up on it here, looking at the way that their eye comes together there, they're mostly, before we reintroduced them or introduced them back into Ohio, they mostly were an anomaly coming through here. They prefer to be up in Alaska and those kind of places. Sounds like a sixth grader learning to play the trumpet. I had a sixth grader learning to play the trumpet. I know what that sounds like. And so here's the identifiers if you're looking for it. If you're looking straight on, look for that V rather than the letter U where the bill meets the face. And see how the bill meets the eye and it wants to encompass it. So it's a little more sloped and you don't have any of the yellow on a trunk. So years ago when I was traveling through, when I was still working, I used to stop at Ottawa and I saw this goose, 3A0, for about 4 or 5 years in a row. It was either at McGee Marsh, this was at Ottawa over here, some nice lotus in the background, and it was there for all those years. They lived to be 25 to 30 years old, and they weighed 25 pounds. So when you see, this last spring we had 4 of them flying towards us, and I told my birding buddy, I said, that's 100 pounds falling, coming right at us. If they drop out of the air and hit us, this is not going to be good. So. Grebes are another thing we see in migration. They're going to look like this in March, not now. What we mostly see is, well, that's fun. And we don't hear much of that either. I think that's on the breeding grounds. Who says that there's not a hole in the water? That guy was just diving into there. So I like this picture because it shows the feet. Duck feet are a little more forward in the body, but the loons and the grebes, their feet are way, way back. And you have a genus species thing. The second part of their Latin name, which is called the specific epithet, refers to, loosely interpreted, feet at the buttocks. So their feet are at the buttocks. And that's why they can swim underwater so well too. They're paddling away there underwater. But this is what we're going to see here shortly when they start coming through. Their winter plumage, really cool. Going to have a nice little black tip on the bill and give you the evil eye if you get to look at here. We occasionally get some redneck breeds, but as you can see from the distribution map, they're not native to this area through migration or anything. So they're kind of they're a bonus when they come through. But again, there's those feet at the very back end of the bird. High-billed grebes, I like the winter plumage. This is the winter plumage, better than the spring plumage. But pied refers to 2 colors, so you see the 2-colored bill over here. And are you ready for the cutest picture that you're ever going to see of a baby waterfowl? That's like a whole room always goes, oh. This is an internet picture. How I would love to do that. I used to include the crappy picture I have. It's so bad. It doesn't even show the colors. It's so bad. But they eat all kinds of stuff, including fish and frogs and crayfish and all that. And they have the ability to regurgitate the undigestible components. So owls are not, raptors are not the only birds that regurgitate undigested components. A lot of the gulls do that, and the grebes as well. And then some of you may have heard this earlier, so we get these guys in abundance. Again, in March and in the dead of winter. March, we're going to see a lot more of them than we are now. But I just love to listen to them. We're going to hear 2 calls too. You're on the screened-in porch in Minnesota. You've been fishing all day. You're sitting there with your favorite adult beverage, listening to that across the lake. Or the Adirondacks, the same thing. That's the first place I heard them, was the Adirondacks when I was in college. So, just a beautiful bird. You get some different colorations with the young of the year and all that, but big bird that you're looking for. And yes, we do get a couple of other loons, but they're kind of strange. So, gulls. You all love them, from lakes to landfills, fishermen and garbage men, right? That's what they do. So this is our Lake Erie. This could be in your harbor. It could be at the Cleveland Harbor. That's what they look like. They follow the boats of the Cuyahoga River. in there, and we're going to quickly run through the gulls that we see, because this could be something you never want to do, and I don't want to bore half the room. If you want to get out there and try to drive yourself crazy with all those white birds. We've got the Bonapartes on the left that we see during part of the season, the green-billed gull in the middle, and the American, what do they call it now, the American herring gull? Yeah, it used to be just herrings, type H-E-R-R, and it goes American herring gull, so they added that name recently here. Why do we not see them during the summertime? Because they're further up north in that pink area. That's where they're breeding. They're breeding in forests and on land and all sorts of different things. So we got those guys here in relative abundance. They're kind of easy. Then we've got the largest gull that we have in North America, the great black-backed gull, and you can see that it's a circumpolar kind of a bird. So it goes all around the globe up there on top, and it gets to be about, what do they say, 25 years old or something, so they live a long time. Lesser black-backed gulls, so what are we looking for? We're looking for those yellow legs, okay, because it's hard to differentiate how black is the mantle compared to that. It's less black, but and it's a much smaller gull than the great black-backed gull. It's a bonus when you get to see a juvenile Savins gull. I think they're prettier again than the adults, because the adults are all white like all the other ones, but as you can see, we don't get many of them here. This was up in the Toledo area more than 10 years ago. And little gulls. They're another one that are way up north. So, but that's the easiest gull. If you have your binoculars on it, when you see it, it goes black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black, white, and it's flying in. So that's cool. And then we always have a group of Iceland gulls and all that. So you can see where they're from. And then the Glaucus gull, this was on the Cuyahoga River a few years ago, but more likely to be challenged with the two, the immature Iceland and the immature Glaucus. And the bill tells it all, okay? So the bill, and then you start talking about the different feather patterns, but really an all dark bill versus the body colored bill over here. Okay, we're moving out of that into hawks and owls. How are we doing here? We got about 9 more minutes. So I'll fly through here. I have a whole talk on raptors. I just gave that on Saturday to the library. And they're kind of cool, but our winter raptor, our migrating bird that's coming off of the tundra, is the rough-legged hawk. And it comes in a dark morph and a light morph. Again, you can see they're circumpolar. They're all over the upper part of the world there, breeding as well as winter down there. They'll come in my side of town. I don't know about how they come over here. On my side of town, in Geauga County, we find them always in the Amish areas, where they have large fields with vegetation on them in the winter. Whereas most of the horticulture practices in our area are bare fields. You either have corn stubble or dirt. I'm sorry, soil. Dirt is what soil is when you bring it in the house. So, that's what they teach you at Master Gardens. But anyway, so they eat the fields because they're eating primarily small mammals. The same things that the red-tailed hawks like to eat too. They have relatively small feet for their size, and they will hover like a kestrel. They'll soar over the field, then when they see something, they'll sit there and hover like a kestrel, and then drop down out of the sky and pounce on top of it. Northern harrier, some people would argue it's a year-round bird. It probably is in some areas, but not where we live. We see them more in the wintertime. The gray ghost is the male, and then the young of the year, the females are brown, and both of them have a white rump patch. They have a bit of a owl-like appearance to their face, but they're really cool birds to watch because they course over the fields. So they're looking for a field, a wet field hopefully, and it's got tall vegetation, maybe 2-3 feet tall, and they take a couple flaps, their wings are slightly above the horizontal, and they just glide. And that's called coursing. Pick a couple more flaps and glide. And then when they see something, turn around and just drop right on it. And you'll find that the owls do the same thing. The merlin, that's our mid-sized falcon. Our small one is the kestrel, the mid-size is the merlin, and then we've got the peregrine. These guys we find near dairy farms, because dairy farms have abundant sparrow populations and English or European starlings. So when we get a few places, but if you really want to go look for them, go to an old cemetery, because the cemeteries are like arboretums. And they've got a lot of conifers and everything. That's number one. And so there's a lot of diversity. So there's birds in there, and that's what they're after. They're birders. And the second thing is all those old cemeteries are surrounded by homes, and people are feeding the birds in the backyard. So that's another place where they can go and snatch something up. So those are our two migrant raptors up there, or the hawks rather. The snowy owls, airports, Wayne County Airport, Cleveland Burke Lakefront Airport, Cleveland Hopkins Airport. That silly bird tried to land 3 times on that thing. And you know what those are? Those are those wide things that if you hit, you go boing, boing. It did it a couple times before it realized it wasn't going to hold its weight, so it was kind of cool. And then even a field in Geauga County. But my best picture came along the lakefront in Painesville, and I saw it ahead of me. It's right on the telephone pole, right next to the road, and I pulled up and I got my scope out, and I carefully set it all up, and I said, oh man, you're going to get some really good pictures. You are so close. I had 500 of that picture. That bird never moved. It blinked his eyes a couple times. It didn't stretch out a wing. It didn't show me That's what being full of yourself will get you. So, and then our short-eared owls. Do you guys get them out here in your fields? Yeah, they're special here too. That was actually out in one of those wildlife areas near Marion, Ohio, Big Valley or something, whatever they call it, Big Island, thank you. Yeah, I haven't been out there in many years, but awesome place for short-eared owls and harriers. And this was at McGee Marsh, so I caught this bird just working up and down the causeway. It was just so cool to watch. And even though it's 15 inches long, it's got a 36-inch wingspan. So they're really cool. They're like an A-10 Warthog fighter plane, if you know what an A-10 Warthog is. Low and slow and powerful, okay? Long-eared owls. Where do you find them? Tucked away in the bushes if you're likely to see them? Ha ha ha, no way. If you live my life, you get them right there in the tree. We're driving down the road, and the guy in the back seat, there were 3 of us win a bird, and he said, stop the car! Back up! He had his gravelly voice, Dick. I've got the hell outside the window! And there it was. It wasn't any more than about 20 yards away in a conifer in somebody's front yard. And across the street was a big field because they hunt at night. They wait to hunt till after dark. That's the best view I'll ever get. Because usually this is where you find them. Or you can find them a little bit like that. But if you're really fortunate and you're at Headlands Beach and you catch them when they just come across the lake, you might find one a little more visible like that. So, okay, northern saw-whet owl. I think this may be our last guy here. The chickadees will tell you where they are, okay, and the titmice, they will hassle them there, and they will sit there and totally ignore being hassled. Kind of hard to see. This is Cleveland Lakefront Nature Preserve. That's where you can get them every year if you can find the little things. They're up there in the trees, in those conifers. But this one was the closest I've been. I had to crawl on my hands and knees back to where it was, but kind of a cool picture. Really, really cool. But wicked, they say they're just wicked ounce per ounce. They're wicked little birds. And that's what you get to listen to in the evening. So other winter visitors, real quick here, dark-eyed juncos. We actually have them year-round in Geauga and parts of Lake County. That's the picture that proves it. Got a mouthful of caterpillars, okay, because they nest in our barn between bales of hay. Every year they have 3 clutches of babies, the first one leaving the nest in mid-May. And it's totally protected in the barn, so we just leave the sliding door open a little bit. We have snow buntings in the agricultural areas. You hope that you can find a good corn stubble field or one that had corn in it and they just plowed it up. Different kinds of plumages throughout the wintertime here. There you see a piece of corn there. Sunflowers, if they grow them, that's a great place for winter songbirds, especially if we have an eruption year. Lapland Larkspurs will be among them. It's nothing more than a crazy sparrow mixed in, and if you got all the furrows, it'll just drive you nuts. But it's great nuts when you get out there. And it's cold as it can be, if it's blowing, and they don't care because these are birds, again, they're right on the verge of the tundra is where they were born. There's another one there. This is March, so they're starting to transition into their breeding plumage in March there. And then you got them together, snow buntings. Let's see here, the white-throated sparrows. I know that's a common bird, but they're still a migrant, very pretty. The adults are looking like this. You've got a different color phase, the tan phase, if you want to look for it, but the white-throat is pretty obvious there. And I love those yellow supercilium, or the yellow supraloral spot. The lores is the area between the bill and the eye, and supra refers to above. So that's a supraloral spot. Who cares, right? The bird's got a yellow spot by its eye. That's all it has. We do an introduction to birding. We introduce all the terms that you might see in a field guide. So that's where you embarrass yourself there. We've got the white crowned sparrows. All the adult male and females look like this. The younger birds look like that. Look for the nice pink bill and nice striping. American tree sparrows, they displace the chipping sparrow for the wintertime. That's kind of cool. You see the black spot in there. I don't know how those birds can do that. I have a lot of sparrow pictures like this too. This should have been the sparrow talk. There's a lot of sparrows out there. I've got a talk called LBJs, Sparrows and Finches in Northeast Ohio. Because when I put these talks together, I learned so much. It really helps me. Northern shrikes, another cool bird to watch for in the wintertime. Our raptorial songbird. Red-breasted nuthatches. Has anybody else noticed a lot of them around already? Someone said the Finch report is out in Canada, and it might be a good year for us with birds coming out of Canada. So maybe we'll see some red poles or something here. Cute little guys got the yank sound. And their winter wrens, we find more abundant too. Got to go with the nasty stuff. We'll go through that with all the cloud stuff. But they'll sing for you. That's kind of cool. And golden crowned kinglets. Who doesn't love kinglets? The story of the kinglet, what it can endure weather-wise, is just incredible. If you can look them up online, I think Bernheim is an author from up in Michigan, and he's wrote about them, and they go to like minus 40 degrees, and they can sit out there and do just fine. Okay, so they think this is Miami here in Ohio, compared to where they are. Another just kind of cool picture from Meadow Marsh. American pipits, I just saw my first ones of the year just yesterday. There was about 20 of them on the mud flats at one of our reservoirs. That's lovely. You do that a lot? No, that's terrible. This is actually a picture from Arizona. So they winter over quite a wide area of the United States. Pine siskins, I haven't seen them in my area in abundance for a long time. But several years ago, when I used to leave my Christmas lights up forever, those were colored, by the way, until the UV light hit them. But they'd be at the feeders, and the whole feeder would be full of them. It was kind of cool. But mostly what we find them is on the alders, the catkins on the alders, or the cones on the alders. And I think the redpoll is our last bird. We're not going to get into hairy versus common. That's an argument for them. This was one of my feeders, one time only in 25 years where we lived, that I had them in the backyard. But generally, they're where we find them on that sunflower patch that I showed you pictures of earlier. So that's it. Thank you very much.